G'day, you're listening to the Virtual Staff Room and this is episode 14. Questions are the answer. On this episode of the Virtual Staff Room, I'm joined by a fabulous lady by the name of Barbara Braxton. I met Barbara virtually on the AusTeacher mailing list, where she was certainly one of the voices of reason and the voices of wisdom. And Barb's always been one of those people who, whenever there's an opinion to be had on something, she always seems to ooze sensibility and wisdom. And so she's one of those people who has earned a great deal of respect from the teaching community, at least that online teaching community, for some of the things she says and some of the wise points of view she offers. I got to meet Barbara a few years ago when I happened to be in Canberra, where she lives and works, and we managed to catch up, and she gave me a tour around the school she was teaching at the time, Palmerston District School, and I was very impressed with what I was seeing going on there. Barb is a teacher-librarian, which means she is really focused on the information process and getting kids to think about how they use information and what they do with that information. And not just the kids, it's also about how teachers think about that information, because sometimes we're not so good at it either. So I'm really pleased for this episode to be able to sit down in the staff room here and have a chat with Barbara over the table. She's in Canberra at the moment, I'm in Sydney. She's not living in Canberra at the moment, she's retired and living just down near Lake Yukonbean in the beautiful snowy mountains, and travelling up to Canberra when time permits. So without further ado, I will introduce you and hope you enjoy this episode. And here is Barbara. So welcome, Barbara.
Thank you.
And this sort of came from me venting about Wikipedia the other day, because I thought someone was being a bit narrow-minded about it. And of course, Barbara came in with the wise words and said, you know, it's not about Wikipedia this or that, it's about teaching kids to use information responsibly in the much broader sense. And of course, that's really true. So, Barb, tell us a little bit about your background and why... what you're thinking about this whole thing about information literacy. I know it's your baby.
Well, it is, because, you know, when they look back on this era in education or in the world, it won't be the industrial age, it'll be the information age, and we're just sort of swamped by it. I got some figures somewhere where it says that whatever a kindergarten, what is known in the world at the moment, the child that's entering kindergarten will have increased 16-fold by the time they leave year 12, which is just a phenomenal rate. So we have to teach them how to use all this information that's in front of them, and to be able to judge it or evaluate it, so they know whether it's true or not, or whether it can be authenticated or checked to make sure that it's true. So it's as much that, because there's another a quote from a lady who was a head of a US organisation, and she said it's going to get to the stage where the person with the best PR machine will be elected president.
Yeah.
And that's a bit scary, because people are they go by the ads and news broadcasts and things like that, and they never sort of want to scratch any deeper than that. So, yeah, I thought that was a really telling quote. So that's why I really got into it when I was a teacher librarian.
Yeah. I'm going to read you something, and I'd just be interested to hear your response to it. This is from something that David Warlick wrote. I don't know whether you're familiar with David's work. But here's a little blurb he wrote. A high school junior is asked to write a report about the Holocaust, a topic that her class has not yet discussed. At home, our student uses her computer with access to the internet to research the topic and word processing software to construct the report. She spends an hour searching the internet and examining a variety of web pages and the subject, and selects 3 websites that are particularly compelling because of the graphics and layout of the pages, indicating authority. Our young woman copies text from the pages, carefully paraphrases some, quotes others, downloads images, pastes them into appropriate spots in her file, prints a professional-looking report and proudly turns it into the teacher 2 days later. She has used the internet to explore, discover and report information about this historic event and her word processing software to craft a rather impressive looking information product. As can easily happen today, each of the websites that our students used were published by a neo-Nazi and white supremacist organisation portraying a biased point of view, and our youngsters' report becomes a reflection of this perspective without the student even knowing it. And I guess as a librarian you've probably seen that happen before, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and that's why it's so important, because you can sort of answer those if they're what we call skinny questions, like write a report about the Holocaust.
Yep.
You can just do that with, copy and paste in 10 minutes and it's done, and hand it in, and research has shown that that it's the prettiest paper that gets the highest marks regardless of what the content might be.
There's actually research that supports that, is there?
Yeah, it's been done by Joy McGregor, and the thing is that if you can set a question, the idea is what do we want children or the students to remember, know, do, understand, value, 3 or 5 years from now. And if you went back to that student and asked, well, what do you know about the Holocaust and why it happened, 3 years from now, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you anything.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it was such a skinny question, whereas if it's a fat question with compare and contrast or using those higher order thinking skills, then they can't copy and paste. You have to actually do something with the information. And one of the things that we really need to teach kids to do is to look at information, whether it be from a book or a print source or electronic, digital, computer, whatever you want to call it, and check it and make sure it's accurate, it's relevant, it's current, it's not biased. Or if it is biased, then identify what the bias is and make sure it's authentic, looking for, that somebody's actually been prepared to put their name behind it and stand up and say, well, look, I wrote this and I put my hand up, for any inaccuracies or whatever. That's taking responsibility for it.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's something that all teachers can do. It's particularly the realm of the teacher-librarian, but unfortunately we're becoming an endangered species now.
Do you find that information literacy and that being able to delve through information and sort of sort the chaff from the wheat, so to speak, is something that even a lot of teachers aren't that good at?
Yes, because it's the world of the instant answer.
Yeah.
And there's, as part of that discussion on Oz Teachers, there were people saying, well, somehow something that's in print form that you can hold in your hand is intrinsically more authoritative than something that's on a screen in front of you. And there were people saying, but I got an Encyclopedia Britannica and it had this wrong, or I got this one. And so, it's not the format of the information that's the crucial issue. It's the accuracy and what have you of the content. And teachers are really, really busy people, and as we all are. And I should imagine, and having just finished teaching at a university, that they were used to getting those sorts of skinny type questions, and they haven't had to be forced to go and contrast and compare information and that themselves. So they more or less take what you see at face value and think, well, if this is so, it must be right.
Yeah.
This has got so-and-so's name on it, or this has got published by Britannica or World Book or whatever, therefore it must be right, and it's not necessarily so.
So how do you work your way through that maze then? I mean, if the things that appear to be believable aren't, where do you go with that? And I guess that's the problem that kids are faced, because they're not so good at telling the obvious stuff, and some of it's not even that obvious, right?
Well, that's right, and it's it's life experiences too. I mean, you have to be able to know when something it's a hard thing to do, and I guess you can't do it with everything. You'd go crazy, so you'd have to prioritise. So, for argument's sake, if it says that at 7:30 on a Wednesday night and your television guide is McLeod's Daughters, well, you think, okay, well, that's on, right. And you don't need to go and cross-reference that. But if it's something critical, then you might go and it comes with experience and experience of life as much as experience of teaching or being at school and being forced to go and do it. And I think that sometimes you should be given projects, for want of a better phrase, in smaller chunks so that perhaps you're just going to focus on giving the students a couple of paragraphs or whatever and say, can you detect a bias in this? Whose voice can you hear? Whose voice is not heard?
Yeah.
And so honing in on that sort of skill development rather than, you can't always do the whole, the big picture. It's a little bit like making a quilt, which is something I've been doing all day. And you can either do it, a whole cloth quilt, which is a big picture, big task, or you break it down into small manageable blocks and put it together until you get the whole. And I think that there's a role for both. You can't put a kid behind the wheel of a car and say, drive to the other side of town without giving them any instructional scaffolding. And I think it's the same with information literacy. You've got to put the little steps in so they've got practice in them. They know what they're there for.
I don't know whether I'm just getting old or whatever, but even now, I look at what kids do now in schools, and no matter how much I seem to unpack things and scaffold things and explain things and help them delve behind the stuff, I still get amazed sometimes at just how hard it is to get kids to sometimes get some of these deeper things and get them to not just accept things at face value. It's incredibly difficult.
It is difficult. And I mean, I guess it depends on the age of the kids that you teach as well, and always trying to relate it back to their world, and say, well, what would you do if? And one of the things that I did when I was at school, I had access to building the Palmerston website, so I would actually show them how I could just put anything I liked up there, and I'd mount the page up onto the website, then we'd go onto the internet and have a look at it, and there it was saying, Mary loves Joe or whatever, and they could see how easy it was to do it. So when you sort of made it more personal like that, they tended to take more notice of it. But it was still, again, it's just this instant age. What do you have to be? One click away from the information you want, or something like that?
Yeah, it's getting to that point, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And they just want instant gratification.
I did an exercise with the grade 9 class last year where we I pulled out a whole bunch of websites that were clearly frauds, fakes, hoaxes, whatever you want to call it.
Like the Velcro farm.
The Velcro farm and the tinfoil helmet that stops people from reading your brainwaves. The oil drilling team that drilled so far into the earth they discovered hell. There's a whole bunch of really interesting websites that are just clearly, mythical or fraudulent. And I put them up to the kids, and I just said, I want to show you some interesting websites. And they were going, wow, that's amazing. Like they just thought it was real. They thought it was real. Yeah, there's another one about water, and it's called H-O-O or something like that. That's a very common, there's often messages on some of the other listservs that I belong to saying, give me some hoax websites like the Velcro farm. Right, that's the one that just always comes. Because teachers, librarians themselves are really, really trying to get this idea across that you've got to cross-check when it's really important to do so. Yeah. But what we're finding, particularly in Australia, and I don't want to sort of harp on an advocacy bent here, is harp away. Well, a lot of principals and teachers just don't understand the job of the librarian in the 21st century. And so when it comes to budget cuts, we're the first to go. And so what we need to do then, if we're not going to have qualified teacher librarians who have to have a second degree on top of their initial teaching degree. So most of us have got master's degree qualifications, and most of us are probably more highly qualified in that way than principals. We need to give teachers the skills
so that, the kids aren't finishing school with not having any exposure to information literacy. And that's why, we sort of try, the Velcro website and those ones, the aluminium tin hat, that's a brilliant one, I like that.
Yeah.
But they're fun ways of getting the message across, because it can be a bit dry and dull and boring and all the rest of it as well. So, yeah.
Well, I've done those things where you do the, when you see your website, you should check its authority and you should check its, and you go through all the stuff, and it can be very dry. What I did with that is I showed the kids those websites, and eventually, we dissected them and pulled them apart and tried to analyse the language and figure out why, even if they weren't quite so incredible, that you could still maybe spot a website that was not quite 100%. And then I gave them a wiki and asked them to go and create their own websites on incredulous articles. So they had great fun sitting there coming up with all sorts of, bizarre stories that they could turn into news articles that were supposed to be sounding believable because of the language they used, but were clearly, the context of their articles was very unbelievable. And they had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, but the thing is that you're prepared to do that, and those kids will have gained heaps from it, but there are so many who won't. It's all too hard, and so particularly in the cases, as you were venting about Wikipedia, it's easier to ban it than to teach kids to use it properly.
But is it really? Okay, can we talk Wikipedia for a sec? Because I'm fascinated by Wikipedia. I read a book a while back called Wisdom of the Crowds, or The Wisdom of Crowds, and it just had so many smart thoughts in there about what happens when you get large groups of people all iterating their expertise through an evolutionary process that, it's not like one person comes along and writes something. It's like hundreds of people come along and evolve a piece of information. And from what I can see of that process, it becomes difficult for the lies to stay intact, because there's always going to be more people wanting to tell the truth than there are to tell the lies.
Yeah, but I guess, and I can see where you're coming from, and I agree with you, and that's fine, particularly if it's something that's provable or not. But there was something, I picked it up the other day just on the news, and it was sort of one of those ones that are gone before you realise it. But there was something about the entries on John Howard and the percentage of the changes that had been made by politicians or public servants and things like that.
Yeah, I saw that.
So
it's that Wikipedia scanner thing?
Yeah, well, I can't remember what it was, but certainly I just heard that, and I'm thinking, well, Wikipedia was, what's his name, Jimmy Wales, said it was never meant to be a definitive encyclopedia like Britannica.
Yeah, sure.
It is what it is. And if you want to do a very quick scanner to find out, well, what's a thylacine or whatever, then it's a very good starting point. But if you need to go further, then you take it. It depends on your purpose and what you want to get out of it. I find that there's lots of ways we can get kids to use it. So and it's a really good tool to get them to start to read between the lines. So you give them something that you know is wrong, or you mount something deliberately that's wrong, and then say to them, okay, so now which part of this is correct, or add something to it, or how does this compare with something from, another publication, so that you get them actively involved in it rather than just saying, no, don't use Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And I think, as you're right. If it's something concrete like, red is red and blue is blue, that then the lies won't stay there. But it's trying also to help kids understand what is opinion and what is fact, because often they can't distinguish that. Not everybody prefaces everything with, well, I believe that. They just, and so that's another part of your information literacy is to help kids understand, well, this this is somebody's belief, and
Yeah, that's a
it
good
can
point.
be
I hadn't
challenged.
thought of that. So get kids to think of everything they read as coming from someone's voice saying, "I believe that."
Yeah, yeah. And the other, well, that's the critical literacy stuff, and and it's not just as much as whose voice can you hear, but it's whose voice is not being heard.
Yeah, right.
And to go back to that Holocaust sample, and you said that she managed to take websites that ended up with a neo-Nazi point of view. Well, if you said to her, okay, whose voice can you hear? And then asked, well, whose can't you hear? She probably couldn't hear very much of the Jewish victims' voices in it.
Right.
So it's a matter of sort of teaching them to strike the balance. But again, it's very hard. They're only little. Even when they leave year 12, they're only 18. I've been alive 3 times that amount of time. 3 times in 2 years tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's why I'm in Canberra, because we're here for my birthday. But yeah, so and even now you sort of, and then there's also this perspective. Well, do you want to read everything that you read, like Harry Potter or whatever, with a critical literacy eye? Where do you just draw the line and read for fun?
Right. Yeah. True.
I think there's a lot of the classics that I can remember when I was at high school, and I know it's just after the dinosaurs got wiped out. And you had to read all what are termed the classics, but you spent so much time dissecting them and trying to get to the author's message when you didn't have the life experiences to be able to really understand it anyway.
Yeah.
That you end up not ever reading them again because you just don't, that your first experience of them was so negative because it was all about, well, what really was behind, Charles Dickens' words of Oliver Twist. And if you didn't have a background of, industrial England, well, you sort of stuffed.
Yeah.
And you don't go back to it.
It really does come down to the way teachers decide to impart that information or help their kids understand that information, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's it. And if you can put it into a meaningful situation that relates back to them, that's what I always try to do when I'm doing it.
I had a teacher at when I was in year 12, and I had a teacher helping us do English for the HSC, and I can remember now the only thing we ever did in those classes, he would stand in front of the class and read the book to us, and then he would dictate notes to us. And he said, this is what you need to write in the HSC. And that was it. That was the entire course.
And you remember the way he taught you rather than what you were taught.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that
I got
right?
no idea what he taught me. I just remember sitting there writing word for word.
Yeah. Well, see, that's interesting too, because last weekend we went to a trivia night, and the theme was school days. And the first set of questions is what was the preposition in this sentence, and what was the conjunction in that one, and what was the adverb. And, of course, I got them all right because that's what you teach, because you have to.
Yeah.
And other people didn't. And what I came away was, well, what was the point of it all? Does it really matter when you're 40 years old if you could identify a preposition from an adverb? And so this is why you sort of like, I always... Stephen Covey said, you begin with the end in mind, and I think you need to be able to identify, why am I doing this? What do I want the kids to know, do, value, and understand from this, in the short term, medium term, and long term? And once you've identified that, you can cut out a lot of the chaff. But then you get into trouble because along comes HSC or the year 5, 7, and 9 testing or whatever, and you come back to the, what is the preposition in this sentence? Well, quite frankly, who gives a stuff?
My mother gives
Which
a
is not
stuff.
very ladylike. But you know what I mean? I mean,
And some people are real sticklers for that. My mother is an absolute stickler for
I know
grammar.
they are.
You have to know your prepositions and your nouns and your verbs.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I mean, okay, you can label them and they've all got their little labels and all the rest of it. Surely it's the underlying skill of communicating.
Mm.
And if you can get your message across efficiently and effectively, that's more important than knowing, well, this is the adjective and this is the verb and this is the predicate and the subject and the adverbial clause of time and all this claptrap.
Yeah, active verbs.
Yeah.
So
So,
I talk about this all the time, but I'm probably not real good at it myself. So how do you do that? How do you take tasks that you give to kids and turn them into things that they will find engaging and that they can't plagiarise and actually makes them think? And I've got an example for you, but I'm just interested to hear what you think.
well, I think you've got to start, and you look at there's a website fno.org, which is run by
It's funny
Jamie
you should say that
McKenzie.
because that was my example.
And you go to Jamie McKenzie's site and you get the questioning toolkit.
Yep.
And you start using the sorts of questions. And if you can ask fact questions, which involve those higher order thinking skills like persuade, argue, justify,
Yep.
compare, contrast, those sorts of things. There are some very, very clever people who have written, and Tom March is one of them, and Bernie
Yep.
Dodge, who write WebQuests, which have the kids take on roles of, like, they get an issue and then there's the various people who are involved in the issue.
Yep.
And they take on roles and they have to investigate those roles from the perspective of the person, whether, and then come back with a solution to the problem that meets their needs and then negotiate with the other stakeholders. And that's the sort of thing, and that's where the net's really great, because you can access the perspectives easier than you can. And that also helps teach the kids about bias and that sort of thing, because, well, Joe Blow over there, he's arguing from the conservationist point of view, and Mary's, arguing from the developer's point of view, and so on. And so they learn in that sort of really active engagement way.
Yeah.
Well,
It's funny you should mention Jamie, because as I said, I had an example I was going to ask you about, and it is a Jamie example. Because I had the fortune of hearing him speak a couple of months ago. He was in Australia to do some workshops.
He's often here. He's very good value.
Yeah, he's great.
Yes.
But the two examples that jumped out to me, there was one he was talking about, most teachers do that thing where they, every kid in the class gets to pick a country and they have to go and research their country and do a report on their country.
Yes.
Yeah, and what is that? What does that mean? You go and get an encyclopedia and you look up China and you write some things down, you stand there and recite them to the class. And what have you really learnt from that?
You learnt that the Great Wall of China keeps the rabbits out.
Well, he had a really good take on this. He said, we sat there and did this exercise, and he said, what if you were going to live somewhere anywhere in the world, what sort
Where
of
would
things,
you go?
or what sort of things would be important?
What
would it be language? Would it be
you?
climate? Would it be the ability to get a job? What are the important factors in going somewhere and having it be, quote, a good place to live?
Yes.
And then his next question was, he gave us a list of 10 cities in China and said, which of these 10 cities would you rather live in?
Yes.
Now,
and
that was a great question.
That's the compare and contrast sort of aspect, and you can bring it back down to the younger kids by saying, okay, you can, it's your birthday, for argument's sake. Are you going to go to McDonald's or Kentucky Fried? And for want of a better phrase, selection.
Yep.
And then they compare and contrast. Well, this is the extent of the menu at Kentucky Fried, and oh gosh, I've got some friends who are vegetarian, so they can't eat the chicken, or I've got this amount of money to spend, so that rules out McDonald's or whatever. So that's coming back to that compare and contrast, and giving the kids a personal input so that the answer is their answer.
Yes.
I mean, take your 10 cities of China,
Well, what I really loved about that was not only did they have to sort of do the compare and contrast between these 10 cities, but the criteria by which they judged the 10 cities was their own. For some kids, it was going to be climate was the most important thing. For others, it was going to be, the ability to speak the language.
That's right, and that's what I was just going to say, was that if you and I did that exercise, for whatever meets your needs and your family's needs and what have you would be quite different from what my needs. So there's no right answer.
Yep.
And the process becomes the important thing, not the product.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that's this research of Joy McGregor's that showed that the more people cut and paste and copy and present a pretty-looking document, the higher the grade.
Wow.
And
that's really sad.
But that's very powerful research. It's been around for a few years now. She's at Telstra Uni. She was at the Women's University in Texas when she did the research for her doctorate. And so it comes back to setting a fat task rather than the skinny task.
Yeah.
You know, research 10 cities in China. Well, hello, I can tell you two, but I'd have a much better understanding if somebody said, well, here's 10 cities, which one are you going to choose to live in?
Yeah.
You know, and 3, 5, 10, 15 years from now, instead of you remembering how you were taught in terms of all the teacher dictated notes that you took down word from word, but you can't remember any content, 10 years from now with a task like that, you would be able to remember the content. Yeah. And maybe even that could be one of those, life-defining moments, because having decided that Shanghai is where you want to live, that might become your goal. One of your goals in life is to actually go to Shanghai.
Yes, so we move in strange ways sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah,
can I tell you the other one that I heard Jamie say, and this one jumped out at me as well as being just an outstanding example of what it means to come up with a question that's not a plagiarising type question, and it really gets kids thinking. The other kind of typical thing that you do in primary school is, pick an explorer, go and research an explorer.
Yes.
And his thing was, he posed the question, what sort of man was Matthew Flinders? And have you heard that one?
No, I haven't. But
so he poses this question: what sort of man was Matthew Flinders? And then the kids sit around and do some brainstorming, and they go, "Oh," and they're purely suppositions. You've got absolutely no background to go off because most people don't know much about Matthew Flinders. And they go, "Oh, maybe he was a captain, so maybe he was sort of a cranky, dictatorial leader type of guy, or maybe he was this or that." And you make all these suppositions about what maybe he was like. And then he pointed you towards some primary resources that were stored online of the letters that Matthew Flinders had sent to his wife back in England.
Yes.
And you get the kids to go and start reading through these letters.
And what can you learn about Matthew Flinders by reading about this?
Yeah, and then taking the suppositions about what sort of man they thought he was compared to what they were reading, and then going, well, you know what, I was wrong there, but I was right there, and coming to these conclusions, and then taking all that and wrapping it up and writing some sort of report answering the question, what sort of man was he?
And what does that teach them about hypothetical situations and trial and error and looking for the variety of solutions? So you're really getting, that deep thinking happening, and that's just so important, because otherwise you get back to taking everything at face value, and the guy who's got the best PR machine becomes the president.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't question it, and that's the problem.
But I've sat in staff rooms with teachers who will sit there and indignantly go, oh, look at this, I've discovered this kid was plagiarising. Look, I looked on the internet and I found the passage where he got it from, and that's just, he's getting zero. And you turn around and go, what was the task? Oh, they had to research a world religion. What does that mean?
That's is it? I don't know whether I'm plagiarising somebody, but one of the things that I've set myself to do is to sort of put together an article for Teacher-Librarian called "The Answer is the Question," because it does come back to the question. What question did you ask?
Yes.
And is it an open question or a closed question? And we're very, very good at doing closed questions that have one-word answers. And one of the tasks I gave my kids last year that I was working with, they had to pose a question that could not be answered with yes, no, or a one word. And the children that's another skill that the children have to learn, is not just answering the questions, but asking it. Sorry?
Can you give me an example of the sort of thing they come up with?
Oh, gosh. Well, we looked at questions that start with why and questions that start with how, and rather than anything, I can't. Oh, one of them wanted to know how do microwaves work.
Oh, okay.
These were how old were they? They were my year 3, year 4 kids, and so a lot of the stuff that, how do things work? Why does this happen? Type of questions that they came up with, and one of the because as I said, kids have to learn to ask as well as answer questions. So one of the techniques I used to use with them was to get a couple of dice, and you on one of them usually 2 colours. So you might have if you roll the blue dice and you assign 1 as why and 2 is how and 3 is when and 4 is which.
Oh yeah.
And then on the other dice, it could be could or might or should or would or can, those sorts of whatever the word is. So they roll the dice, got 2 dice in front of them, they've picked up a why, say maybe a 1 and a 3, they look up on the board, and that means they've got to pose a question that starts with why should.
Yep.
Or
I think I came
how
across
might.
that in a peel workshop one time.
Yeah, it's quite a common technique, but it really makes them go beyond those very skinny questions that, the how, what, why, when, when did somebody die, or who invented Australia, those very basic questions.
They're better than some of the questions I hear. A lot of the questions I hear aren't even questions. They're, tell me about. And
well, that's an interview technique, isn't it? That's an interview technique when you're interviewing somebody, or tell me about your experience with.
Yeah.
And that's the person on the other end rave off. Bit like me.
No, it's all good. But it is. It's all about. It really is. I'm seeing it more and more that the real skill of the 21st century is not just being able to know the answer, but to know where to look when you have a question.
Well, that's the first part of information literacy. What information do I need? What do I already know? What more do I need to find out? Where can I find the information I need?
Yeah.
How can I search these sources effectively? And so on. That's that sheet that I sent you.
Yeah.
But but it's also, I think we need to move away from our and I hope our politicians are listening. That we need to move away from our focus on the.
They all listen. John listens to this.
Oh, good. I hope what's her name, Julie Bishop does. But move away from the product and look at the process. We can't teach kids all the content. They're not empty jugs. Never, even before, information literacy and what have you was invented, were we ever able to teach them all the content in the world? So we've got to teach them how to find out when they need to know.
Yeah. But how do you then judge that? I mean, how do you, what's the word? How do you balance that against the fact that our education system is so not set up to value that? I mean, we still have a HSC it's all about remembering facts and regurgitating them on the test, and in the ACT, and this is what's really got me angry in the last few days. We have in the ACT the college system, where throughout years 11 and 12 you work towards your year 12 certificate. There's no external examination. We have the highest year 12 retention rate in the country, and we have the highest UAI scores. And Ms. Bishop, in her wisdom, is now working with our unelected Minister of Education, whose first job was to close 30 of our 100 schools, to bring in an external examination system. Mm-hmm. When this what we've got, it's been working very well for 35 years. Yep.
And this is one of the issues that I have, and one of the reasons I'm quite glad I'm not teaching in the classroom at the moment, because it's getting very political.
Yep.
And the process approach is so important, but, you can weigh a pig every day, but at the end of the year, it's still a pig. It ain't going to change it. You can test it and you can poke it and prod it, but it's not going to turn into a silk purse. And so you just have. I don't know until we can get some enlightened. I don't know. Because one of the things that, again, this business of, well, if you don't do it my way, we're going to withhold your federal funding.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just bully techniques. Mr. Howard put in all this, jumps up and down about bullying in schools, and his minister's not using the biggest bully techniques out of, do it our way or no funding.
Mm.
But I'm getting a bit political now.
Well, yeah, it's all right.
I can't even get into trouble for it. No, I can't even get into trouble for it because I'm not employed by the department.
Then you can say what you like.
I can say what I like now because I'm a private citizen. But that's the sort of thing. But again, it comes back to the question you asked. But when the educators like you and me and Anne and Jean and all the other people on Oz Teachers and OzTL and what have you, we know that the most effective way of doing it is what we're doing with, Jamie McKenzie's techniques, what you were doing with your websites and that sort of thing, and using Wikipedia and what have you, and the other Web 2 technologies. But it's not, as you say, it doesn't dovetail into that external examination thing. So
no, and from what I can see, the really good teachers are the ones who know how to buck the rules, but make it appear like they haven't bucked the rules.
Yeah, and that's a very fine line to tread.
Yeah, it is. I know.
Yeah.
I occasionally get into trouble about it.
I was constantly in trouble. Only the depths varied, as they say.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it comes down to the fact, and this is what I was sort of guided by, was that the kids are my clients.
Yep.
The kids are what matters.
Exactly.
This is what I believe the kids need to know, do, understand, value, and to hell with the rest of them. And I just went on in my own sweet merry way and did what I felt that was in the kids' best interest. And
I like the way you think.
If I got myself into trouble, well, I can argue with the best of them.
Yeah. No, I like the way you think.
Well, if you're not there for the kids, why are you there?
Yep, I agree.
I mean, essentially, that's what it's about, isn't it?
Yep, that's for sure.
We're not there for the pay packet, that's for sure. or the status in the community.
I don't know. I think people are starting to really have a much higher opinion of teachers than they did even a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well,
I have to say that you don't tend to get the, underworked, overpaid and too many holidays lines quite as often as you do.
No, you don't. I drove a cab for a couple of years, and I was driving this guy once, and he didn't know that I was obviously an ex-teacher, and he was sitting in the back to his girlfriend bagging teachers, and I ended up really getting into a bit of a discussion with this guy. I wasn't going to take that lying down.
No, I just keep, when people ask me that or say that sort of thing, I said, oh, well, shall we swap jobs for a day or two? And they never want to. They never really want to trade it. Good God, no, they say, well, don't bag me because, we're doing our best here.
Yeah, that's right. Now, speaking of jobs, you're not teaching in the classroom at the moment. You're living outside of Canberra, you were saying?
I'm retired.
Retired. Oh, what a lovely
I'm
word. Retired. The
is.
two sweetest words in the English language. Retired.
like a car. I gave myself I retired last July and I had some family issues that I had to deal with, so I gave myself a year off, and it just so happened that my husband did his shoulder, so I'm just having a year off. I'm doing a lot of writing for the Curriculum Corporation and going to be working for Charles Sturt University later on, marking assignments and things, but basically I'm just a lady of leisure.
Wow,
it's great.
That's a pretty good way to be. On that note, I'm going to wish you all the best for your birthday tomorrow. And,
Thank you.
And hope you have a good one.
This is okay.
It's great. Yeah, look, are you kidding me? It's fantastic. I don't know whether you realise how much influence you've had over the years, with the things you've helped people with and you've done for people, but it's considerable.
Oh, thank you for that.
So
I just hope I've left the world a better place than what I found it.
I'm sure you have. Are you still doing your quiz? What was your quiz called?
Quiz of Oz.
Quiz of Oz, yeah. Are you still doing that?
I knew I wouldn't be able to do it online this year, so I put it onto CD, and that's available through www.imagination.org. Little
Excellent.
plug.
All right, well, I'll put it on the show notes and we'll stick it on the blog and
so it's on CD, and if I'm in Canberra next year, I'll run it again online again.
Oh, good.
But I don't know where I'll be.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And,
thank you so much, Chris, and it's so nice to hear your voice.
No worries. Good on you. Catch you later, Barb. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Well, thank you, Barbara, and you can find Barbara's website over at eMagination. That's e-magination.org, and over there you'll find her big project, The Quiz of Oz, which is a whole bunch of trivia-type questions that you can download or purchase, rather, and run it with your classes, and it's some really good stuff. Her other big project, of course, is Read Around Australia, which was very, very popular. I haven't heard much of it lately, but I'm sure it's still being used. So it's really good to catch up with Barb. She's a lovely lady and lots of good ideas, lots of good opinions. And I'm sure Julie Bishop will be after me, but anyway, never mind. Speaking of websites, don't forget you can always go over to www.virtualstaffroom.net to visit the blog that accompanies this podcast, and there you'll find all the show notes, previous episodes, and everything you need to get up to speed with the Virtual Staff Room. I just want to say thank you to all the people who have taken the trouble to fill out the survey form that I put online recently. The details are still on the website, and it's still not too late to add to that if you'd like to. It's been really good to get some feedback on the show, and mostly positive, which is really, really nice. So thank you to all those people that have taken the trouble to do that. I've also got a few other leads and ideas for future podcasts, and I will be chasing those up. I haven't forgotten about it. Next weekend, I'm actually going up to present a couple of sessions at the 4th Australian Interactive Whiteboard Conference on the Gold Coast. So that'll be fun, and I'm hoping to actually record a podcast up there as well. Might even try and have a few surprises up my sleeve. But stay tuned, because we'll try and bring you something from the conference next weekend. Until then, that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. My name is Chris Betcher, and you've been listening to the Virtual Staff Room.